The sun was still low when General Angela Bryant pulled her black Ford Edge into a dusty lot of a quick fuel gas station just off Route 29, outside Briarwood Township, Texas. She had just wrapped a high-stakes debrief at a restricted military site near D.C. Her uniform was crisp, her boots polished, her nameplate gleaming. She looked tired but not defeated. The kind of tired that came from carrying burdens most people would never understand. She stepped out, stretched her back, breathed in the humid air, and grabbed her phone from the console. A message blinked from her aide. She ignored it. Inside, the gas station was nearly empty. A teenage clerk in a Bass Pro Shops hoodie stood behind the counter. A man scratched lotto tickets in the corner. Angela grabbed water and a protein bar, headed to the counter. The clerk said nothing at first. His eyes moved from her patches to her face, then to the badge clipped to her chest. "You in the military or something?" he asked slowly. "I am," she replied, placing her items down. He hesitated, rang her up. She paid in cash, said thank you, and turned to leave. But the air shifted. That silent, familiar tension, one that never needed words to announce itself. Outside, she stood near her SUV and called her driver, updating him on her location. She spoke clearly, still in view of the storefront windows. As she checked her watch, movement caught her eye. 2 sheriff's cruisers pulled in fast, one behind her SUV, one by the pumps. Doors slammed. Boots hit pavement. For a second, she thought maybe there had been a robbery. But the way they looked at her, hands hovering over holsters, jaws clenched, told her otherwise. The first officer, tall, blonde, with mirrored sunglasses, barked, "Ma'am, put the phone down. Hands where I can see them." She blinked. "I'm Brigadier General Angela Bryant. I just came from." I said, "Hands where I can see them. Now." The second officer circled behind her. She calmly placed the phone on the hood and kept her hands up. "Sorry to interrupt the story. Before we continue, we'd really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us get closer to 1,000 subscribers. It means the world to us. Thank you so much." "I'd like to know what this is about," she said. "We got a call," the second one snapped. "Someone matching your description. Acting suspicious. Military gear. Aggressive attitude. I've been here 6 minutes," she said. "I bought a snack. Made a call. Stood by my car. You got ID?" The second officer asked, already reaching for his cuffs. "Yes, you can check." But before she could finish, he grabbed her wrist. "Sir, I'm a commissioned officer in the U.S. Army. You're making a mistake. You're not above the law just cause you play dress up," the first one spat. And that's when she knew this wasn't about a call. It was about control. He twisted her arms behind her back and slapped the cuffs on tight. She didn't resist. No sudden moves, no raised voice, just breathe. The parking lot grew quiet. The man with the scratch-off ticket stood at the window. A woman at the gas pump froze, phone in hand. People were watching, recording. But the officers didn't care. Her rank meant nothing. Her poise meant nothing. Her uniform, they saw a threat where there was none. And yet, that wasn't the end. Because Angela Bryant wasn't just anyone. And she knew exactly who to call. The second officer, shorter, stockier, and red in the face, tugged at her elbow, guiding her toward the cruiser. She didn't resist. Her expression didn't waver. But inside, her heart had turned into a quiet storm. "Where's your ID now?" The taller one barked as he rummaged through her SUV without consent. "In the side pocket of my bag, clearly marked," she replied. "You people always got an excuse," he muttered, yanking the bag out like it was contraband. Angela stared ahead. The sweat on her back wasn't from the heat, it was from restraint. Every instinct in her body screamed to speak up, to assert her authority. But she knew how quickly things could go wrong. In the wrong hands, rank becomes a threat. So silence became her shield. "You gonna tell me why you're wearing all this?" The second officer asked, yanking her around to face him. "Trying to scare people. That a real uniform." "I've served this country for 26 years, she said calmly. He smirked. "Yeah, and I'm the Queen of England." She could feel the stares now. 2 construction workers leaned on their truck across the lot. A teenager on a bike had stopped at the edge of the property, phone pointed right at them. The woman who had been pumping gas was still recording, mouth slightly open, frozen in place. One officer glanced at the onlookers and muttered, "Get back to what you're doing. Ain't none of your business." The teen didn't budge. Angela inhaled slowly through her nose. The steel cuff bit into her wrist bone. She'd had worse bruised ribs from combat training, a fractured finger during a lockdown in Kandahar, but nothing like this. Because this felt personal. I need to speak with my Pentagon liaison, she said clearly. The shorter officer laughed. Your what? My Pentagon liaison. I have direct clearance. The taller one rolled his eyes. Lady, we've heard every trick in the book. You really think anyone's going to believe you're some big shot when you're standing here in cuffs? I think you should check the badge number on my ID. And I think you should make that call before this becomes bigger than you can handle. Is that a threat? He snapped, stepping closer. It's a suggestion, she replied. Silence stretched between them. Behind it, the hum of gas pumps continued. A quiet shuffle of feet. People too scared or stunned to speak, but the phone stayed up. The red dots of recording blinked steadily in the light. The officer holding her bag finally opened the ID case. Colonel, no, Brigadier General Trailer, he said, confusion creeping into his voice. The second officer snatched it from him, frowning, looking at her, then back at the badge. Doesn't change what the clerk said, he grumbled, clinging to the last shreds of control. That was the pivot point. Angela felt it. That brief flicker when doubt began to sink into their confidence. But ego is a stubborn beast. For some, admitting a mistake is harder than facing the consequences of it. The taller officer pulled out his radio and muttered something unintelligible. The younger one looked around again. More people had gathered, still quiet, still watching, but watching was enough. Angela wasn't finished. Not even close. Time didn't stop, but it sure started to drag. Brigadier General Angela Bryant stood still, wrist-bound, the weight of a nation's service stitched across her chest, and not a single thread seemed to matter. What mattered, apparently, was that a gas station clerk in a quiet Tex town had called the cops and said a black woman in army gear was causing concern. That's all it took. She scanned the crowd. 6, maybe 7 people now, 2 older men by the ice machine, a young woman in scrubs on lunch break. The kid on the bike still recording, thumbs steady. Not one of them said a word out loud, but their silence spoke plenty. Then, from the edge of the lot, a voice rang out. That lady's a general, man. Everyone turned. It was a boy, maybe 17, maybe 18. Ball cap on backward. Shine high, like he dared anyone to argue. He held his phone like a shield. The shorter cop turned toward him, irritation rising. You need to keep out of this, son. I'm not your son, the boy fired back. And I can record this. That's the law. The taller officer's eyes flicked toward Angela. The teen didn't back down. I was watching a woman in uniform get cuffed for buying water. So I'm still doing that. The comment hit hard. Angela said nothing, but she had the kid's face memorized. The shift had started, someone spoke up. Still the tension thickened. You think that uniform makes you special? The short cop muttered. That badge protect you everywhere? She didn't answer. He leaned closer. Out here, you're not above us. She met his eyes. It's not about being above. It's about knowing the rules. And you're breaking more than one. That struck. The other cop hesitated, still holding her ID. Angela moved just enough to activate her smartwatch. Authorization Bravo 3. Emergency protocol. Connect Pentagon liaison. The cop snapped. What the hell are you doing? Making a call. A voice came through her watch. General Trailer, are you safe? No. I've been detained. Immediate assistance required. Understood. Help is on the way. The officers froze. What did you just do? I called someone who knows who I am. The crowd grew. Phone stayed up. Whispers turned louder. She's a general, someone shouted. I saw her ID. I don't care who she is. The officer barked. I bought water and made a phone call, Angela replied calmly. Moments later, a silver Ford truck pulled in. Lieutenant Colonel Reeves stepped out, flashing his credentials. General Trailer, he said, you all right? I'm not injured. Just unlawfully detained. He turned to the officers. Take those cuffs off. Now. The taller officer stepped forward, hesitated, then uncuffed her. Angela rubbed her wrists. No bruises, just pressure. Pain didn't always leave a mark. You got ID? The tall cop asked Reeve. Reeve handed over federal clearance. You think the Pentagon sends people without it? He added, preserve all body cam footage. Don't tamper. The short officer finally mumbled, we made a mistake. No, Angela said, you made a choice. Reeve glanced at the crowd. You might want to call your superiors. This is already out of your hands. 20 minutes later, 3 black SUVs pulled in, no sirens, no shouting, just agents stepping out like it was planned. One approached Reeve, whispered something, then turned to Angela. We'll debrief off-site. You can ride with me. I'm fine. I'll wait. I want to hear what they say. She wasn't leaving until they faced what they'd done publicly. A woman from the legal office stepped forward. Who initiated the stop? They hesitated. The clerk called, the short cop said. Said someone in military gear was being aggressive. An agent headed into the store. Inside, the clerk stammered, I didn't mean it like that. She looked serious. She looked right at me. Outside, Angela fixed her sleeves. I've worn this uniform longer than some of you have worked. I never expected it to be the reason I got treated like a threat. But that's what happened. Because even when we serve, we still get questioned. An agent turned to the cops. You're relieved of field duty. Your superiors will follow up. Your body cams have been secured. Brett's mouth opened, then closed. The short cop stayed silent. But silence doesn't erase harm. 2 days later, the Briarwood Township incident was everywhere, news cycles, social media headlines. People were stunned. Others weren't. Angela Bryant was no longer just a name, she was the general they handcuffed. The sheriff's office issued a short statement, internal review underway, cooperating with federal authorities. No apology. No ownership. The Pentagon didn't wait. Body cam footage was processed. Legal teams mobilized. The officers' faces were shared, dissected, slowed down frame by frame. Chase Bowman, the teenage gas station clerk, went on local news in a too-big blazer. I just thought she looked intense, he muttered. I didn't know the uniform. He panicked. That much was clear. At the Pentagon, Angela sat with legal advisors. No emotion, just facts. What do you want us to do, General? Someone asked. She answered calmly, I don't want a headline. I want procedures fixed. And I want those 2 never to wear a badge again. One officer resigned. The other was suspended. No fanfare, just fallout. But what mattered more were the messages, hundreds. From soldiers, veterans, young girls. One handwritten letter from Topeka stood out. I'm 13. I saw you stand there. My mom said, see. This is why I tell you to walk with purpose. I'm proud of you. Angela read it 3 times. She didn't press charges. Not because she couldn't. Because she didn't have to. Visibility was the justice. The system had been forced to look in the mirror. And people noticed. 3 weeks later, she stood behind a small podium at a community center. No flags. No fanfare. Just folding chairs and quiet. Civilian clothes, no rank. I didn't come to retell what you already saw, she said. I came because something still doesn't sit right. What stayed with her most wasn't what happened in the parking lot. It was what people said after. Why didn't she yell? Why didn't she fight? If it were me, I wouldn't have stayed so calm. She looked out at the room and said, you think calm is a choice? Calm is what kept me alive. I wasn't calm because I felt safe. I was calm because I didn't. She spoke about the myth that wearing the uniform earns you respect. That's not true for all of us. It wasn't true for me. A man asked, do you think it was about race? She didn't pause. I think it was about assumptions. Skin, gender, posture, all of it. They didn't stop me out of curiosity. They didn't expect someone like me to belong. The hardest part wasn't the cuffs. It wasn't the cameras. It was knowing if she'd moved too fast or spoken too loudly, she might not be alive. You want change? She asked. Don't ask why I stayed calm. Ask why calm was my only shield. Don't ask why I didn't yell. Ask why no one else did. She stepped back. No applause, just silence. Not empty but full. Outside, life went on. Kids on bikes, a car alarm, a breeze. But those who heard her that day live or through a screen left changed. 3 weeks later, the video was still circulating. It had faded from national headlines, but in classrooms, training rooms, and Sunday dinners, it stayed alive. At Culpeper High School, a government teacher played the footage during a lesson on civil rights. Watch her posture, he told his students. That's what dignity under pressure looks like. One student raised her hand. Why didn't anyone stop the officers? No one had a good answer, but the question mattered. In a small conference room inside a state police academy, cadets sat in silence watching the body cam footage. Their instructor paused at mid-frame. Angela, in uniform, hands behind her back, eyes forward. "This is not how you treat people," he said. "Especially not those who serve." A few cadets took notes. One wiped their eyes. At a DC coffee shop, two women in suits whispered over their drinks. "She didn't even flinch," one said. "I would have lost it." The other replied, "That's why she's a general." Meanwhile, Angela received letters. One was from a retired police chief who'd taught ethics for 20 years. He wrote, "You reminded me why I started, and what I forgot along the way." Another came from a mother in Ohio. "I showed your speech to my daughter. She wants to be a general now too." Angela didn't seek attention. She didn't post or speak again. But she knew the story had done what it needed to. It made people talk. It made them question. It made them remember her not as a victim but as a mirror held to a system that had to change. And that, she thought quietly, was more powerful than any podium. 1 month later, the world didn't forget. At the Pentagon, a quiet ripple of change had begun. Angela's name was now cited in internal memos not as a warning, but as a standard. A new training module for military police interaction had been launched, with a case study titled "The Culper Incident, Power, Bias, and Protocol." Her image in uniform, calm under pressure, opened the first slide. In Texas, the county sheriff's office updated its policies. Body cam footage now required same-day uploads. Anonymous complaints were no longer accepted without verification. And in every patrol car, a printed memo was taped to the dash: "Bias is not a tool. It's a threat." Some officers grumbled. Others paid attention. At a small black-owned bookstore in Alexandria, a book club gathered around a printout of Angela's community speech. "She didn't raise her voice," one woman said. "But didn't she say everything?" Heads nodded. They discussed silence, fear, and grace. Then one woman added, "I carry myself different now. Not with fear, but with presence." Angela stayed mostly quiet. She returned to her duties, briefed teams, met dignitaries, moved through corridors of power with the same steady pace. But she noticed the difference. Fewer dismissive glances. More careful words. Young officers who saluted a little sharper. Junior staff who stopped her just to say, "Thank you for what you did, even if you didn't mean to do it for us." She didn't need medals. She had plenty. What she saw now was something harder to earn: acknowledgement, accountability, and just maybe beginning seeds of change. 1 month after that parking lot, Brigadier General Angela Bryant hadn't just survived a moment of injustice, she had turned it into a movement without shouting, without fighting, just by standing her ground and refusing to disappear. 6 months later, her story hadn't faded, it had evolved. At police academies across the country, cadets now studied the Culper case during civil rights training. Angela's image, calm, cuffed, dignified, was printed in textbooks next to the question, "What does lawful presence look like?" Instructors paused the body cam footage at the moment she said, "I'm a brigadier general in the United States Army," and asked, why didn't they listen? The silence in those rooms was always the same: heavy, uncomfortable, necessary. In a military base auditorium in San Diego, Angela stood before 300 new officers. She wore civilian clothes, no ribbons, no stars, just presence. "You don't need to raise your voice to take control," she said. "You don't need anger to command respect. But when the system fails, you let your stillness become your resistance." The crowd rose when she finished. Not for her title, for her truth. Meanwhile, law enforcement departments quietly rewrote policies. Briarwood Township was no longer a national embarrassment, but a case study in reform. Officers now wore scanners linked to ID databases. Protocols for civilian military stops had been reissued. One former officer, now teaching ethics, said, "Angela didn't break us. She made us look harder." Her mailbox still filled with letters. A group of middle school girls in Chicago had painted a mural of her. A police captain in Houston wrote, "I show my team your video every Monday. Not to shame, but to remind." Angela didn't respond to them all. She didn't need to. The message was moving on its own. She never chased justice for applause. But half a year later, she had become what few are allowed to be in uniform: visible, vulnerable, and victorious. Not because she demanded it, but because she never stopped showing up. And in doing so, she gave others the courage to do the same. Note: this story is entirely fictional and created for the purpose of raising awareness. It highlights issues of responsibility, justice, and the importance of treating everyone with respect and dignity. We firmly oppose violence, prejudice, and injustice in all forms. Viewer discretion is advised.